Greetings and salutations to everybody out there in podcast land. Hope you're keeping warm as the vast majority of the country still dealing with nasty, brutal, cold weather. But that's okay. You come on in here, as you always should, as you always do every Friday night. Step on into the warm environment here at the studios at the Fortress of Rock. We'll take care of you. We'll give you an hour and a half every Friday night of fantastic talk about the music that we love. Of course, that being 70s and 80s rock and roll. I, of course, am your humble and gracious host, the Maestro Kevin Crane, the Ayatollah of rock and rolla. You guys know by now, every Friday night, this is what we do. And it is a pleasure and a joy to share my views on classic rock with you. Feel free to drop me a line through our Spotify page or our Facebook page and let me know how you feel about anything and everything we talk about here on the Fortress of Rock. And as you know, we always start off every Friday night with news of the world, our tribute to the late, great Freddie Mercury and his band Queen. And we figured the dam was gonna burst, right? The dam was gonna burst at some point. I don't know if I would say this is an out-and-out disaster when the levee breaks, the classic Led Zeppelin song, which I love so much. I don't know if it's that much of a groundswell, but we do have a lot of touring news to finally discuss here this week. This will take up about 80% of news of the world, so let's get into it right now. We'll start off with 9 Inch Nails, not one of my favorite bands, but I know this is significant. It has to be addressed. 9 Inch Nails will be going out on tour in 2025. They have 14 European dates scheduled in June and July, and then they will come back here to America for 23 North American dates in August and September. So if you're a fan of 9 Inch Nails, hop on this right now. Do your research, find out when you can get tickets if they're not already on sale for 9 Inch Nails. Billy Idol is going out on tour with Joan, Jett, and the Blackhearts. They have 12 North American dates scheduled for April and May, and then 18 more dates in the U.S. in August and September. Now, I am a very, very cynical man. I would hope by now you guys have figured this out. And I love Billy Idol and I love Joan Jett, but I just don't see how this double bill is going to sell out the arenas, the venues that they are scheduled for. They needed a third act for this. They somehow needed to bring in a third band. I wouldn't be shocked if they announce an addition here in the next month or so, because I can't see Joan Jett and Billy Idol being able to sell out 15,000, 18,000 seat venues. I just don't see it. Sorry. Hate to be brutally honest, but there it is. Oh, wait, we've got our weekly Gene Simmons solo tour update. We kid because we care. Yes, Gene Simmons has added 6 more solo dates to his tour in 2025. And if you care, go out and find a venue near you, buy tickets. Of course, Gene Simmons is playing mostly classic Kiss songs, along with a few of his solo songs, covers. Unfortunately, the Scorpions have had to postpone their Las Vegas residency. They've had to push it back to August now because drummer Mickey D is fighting off a blood infection. It has taken longer than they anticipated for him to get over the hump on this. So the Scorpions' residency in Las Vegas officially now postponed to August of 2025. Peter Frampton. Okay, a lot of people are giving him a break on this, and I'm not going to. I am not going to. He has turned out to be one of these performers who's using his fans. Yes, I'm going to say it, using his fans. Because he keeps saying, I'm going on a farewell tour. I'm going out on a farewell tour. Oh, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. And then he thinks he's so cute and clever with all the subsequent tour names. Never say never. Never say never again. Whatever they are. Here's the thing, Peter. You never should have opened your yap and said you were going out on a farewell tour. Never. And then, of course, he gets in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Oh, now I can make more money. Oh, my gosh. Maybe I never should have said I was going out on a farewell tour, which the point of was to make more money. I will always say this, kids. These performers don't care about us. And Peter Frampton is a perfect example. Seems like a great guy. Seems like an awesome, awesome dude. But when they start to pull this garbage, oh, I'm going on a farewell tour. You got to come see me now because you'll never get to see me again. And then the next year, oh, no, this is the farewell tour. This is the one. And then the year after that, no, I swear up and down, this is the farewell tour. They are using you. And I have no respect for Peter Frampton as he's been doing this now for years. And if you want to go see him, I'm happy for you. He's got 10 North American dates scheduled in March and April of 2025. And again, seems like an awesome guy. But I do not like bands and performers who use their fans like this. Duran Duran. If you're over the pond, if you're overseas, somewhere in Europe or the UK, Duran Duran has just announced 14 European summer dates, June and July of 2025. Now here's an interesting little double bill. I wouldn't mind seeing this. I wouldn't. Daryl Hall, along with Glenn Tilbrook, of course, one of the two main members of Squeeze. They are slated to play 7 dates here in the U.S. in March and April, and then 5 more dates over in the UK in May. So you're not getting Hall & Oates and you're not getting Squeeze, but you're getting the most important parts of both. Still, wouldn't mind seeing that show. Then we have the issues again out in California with the wildfires and all the relief efforts. And again, despite the cynic that I am, And I was glad to see the president went out to North Carolina and actually acknowledged the fact that those people are still suffering. And I want to know where all of Hollywood is to help them out. Huh. Things that make you go. But of course, we want to help out California as well. So we've had a lot of people donating to the wildfire relief in California, in the LA area in particular. We know about Fire Aid. We talked about that here last week on the Fortress of Rock. We've had a couple more acts added to the Fire Aid shows. John Fogerty will be playing at Fire Aid, as will the Black Crowes. And again, I'm not trying to be an absolutely cynical jerk. It's amazing how all this money is pouring into California and everybody is ignoring North Carolina and what they went through with the hurricanes in 2024. And fish. I'm not a fish guy. I tried one time about a decade ago to get into fish, and I couldn't do it. Not the food. Love fish. Lobster, well, that's seafood, I guess. But even a good trout, good bass. No, we're talking about PHISH, fish, the jam band. And they will play 8 shows on the West Coast in April to benefit wildfire aid. From what I can tell, they will guarantee at least $300,000 in terms of a donation to LA wildfire relief. And I will say this one more time. I am trying to be nice and say, let's help out LA, let's help out California, even though they're ignoring North Carolina completely and totally, because I just don't think they care about anybody but themselves. Now, before we move on from concerts, one last thing. I don't have details on this. I just found out about this an hour or two before I started taping the Fortress of Rock this week. This is episode 180, dropping on January the 24th, 2025. An interesting double bill that I might actually have to break my 2025 concert embargo for. Shinedown and Bush. Now, I have never seen Bush before. Don't go there, you disgusting people. Shinedown, I have had friends that have seen Shinedown multiple times. They love it, love Shinedown. They keep telling me, you have got to see this band. So, I am in the process. I am working on going to see Shinedown and Bush. Not verified yet. Still have no concerts scheduled for 2025, but we know that's not going to last. That will change. This is just a very odd year, a very odd situation. But Shinedown and Bush might be the first show we set up here for 2025. And of course, we would review that here on the Fortress of Rock. Now, moving on from touring news, this was a bad week in terms of losing some important people in the world of rock and roll. We start off with the last surviving member of the band. Now, you guys know I have said this over and over and over again, ad nauseum. I am not a Bob Dylan fan. Hence, therefore, whatever. I didn't really get into the band. That was Bob Dylan's backing band, and then, of course, they broke off on their own. Robbie Robertson and Levon Helm. But they have all, this is kind of sad. I cannot believe that every member of the band is now dead. The last surviving member passing away here within the past week, and that would be keyboardist, multi-instrumentalist Garth Hudson. And that does make me sad. That does really get to me. Even though I'm not a fan, I'm not a follower. When a major, influential band, all the members pass away, that kind of is a gut punch to any true blue music fan. And that's kind of how I feel about the passing of Garth Hudson. Again, not a band fan at all, but it just kind of hurts. It's another sign that at some point we're going to get a cascading effect. We saw it a few years ago. There was a 3 or 4 month span where we lost literally 10 to 12 very important members from the world of rock and roll. But with all of these other bands, classic legacy artists getting older, we're going to get hit at some point here soon. Because Father Time always wins. Where we're going to lose a lot of heavyweights, all in a very short, compressed time span. Toby Myers. Some of you out there might be going, who? Toby Myers? Who? I am a huge fan of John Cougar Mellencamp, and yes, I still say Cougar, because it is an awesome, damn cool name, and I don't understand why John ditched it. Oh, it was a manufactured name forced on me by the corporations. So I'm going to go back to my regular name, Mellencamp. Okay. Why didn't you start out like that? And if you were forced into going with John Cougar, stick with it because it's awesome. I would love to be called John Cougar. Are you kidding me? But my fascination with John Cougar notwithstanding, John Cougar Mellencamp had a very solid, consistent backing band throughout all of his time, through his rise, through American Fool, Scarecrow, Mike Wanchick, Larry Crane, Kenny Aronoff, and on bass from 1982 through 1999 was Toby Myers. I kind of relate John Mellencamp in that sense to Billy Joel. Billy Joel had the same group of guys behind him for years and years and years through most of his classic albums. Of course, we know Liberty DeVito on drums. Just because you're a solo artist does not mean you don't have a community, a family behind you, a group of solid musicians that you keep with you. that stay with you through thick and through thin, through the good times and the bad times. Toby Myers, longtime bass player for John Mellencamp, passed away here over the past week. And then finally, one of the most underrated players from the hair metal era, from the 80s all the way through. Now, he started out with Thin Lizzy, but for our purposes, he played on a couple massive, important, popular Whitesnake albums, and then formed the underrated Blue Murder. And if you have not listened to the first album from Blue Murder, it's tremendous. Absolutely tremendous album. And I believe Sykes took over. Not only he was a guitar player for the most part, but he took over on lead vocals for Blue Murder. So John Sykes, unfortunately, also has passed away. So thoughts and prayers go out to the family and the friends of Garth Hudson, Toby Myers, and John Sykes. Okay, we've been talking a lot about the Bob Dylan movie. I do this as a public service. A Complete Unknown, starring Timothy Chalamet as a young Bob Dylan. And once we get to the point where it hits streaming, again, as a public service to you guys out there, I will watch it and I will review it here on the Fortress of Rock. A Complete Unknown. Shut out at the Golden Globes, but 8 Oscar nominations. So we'll see how many Academy Awards that A Complete Unknown walks away with. Hollywood tends to love these movies, these rock and roll biographies, when it's the quote-unquote serious artists. Of course, Rami Malek got an Oscar for his portrayal of Freddie Mercury in Bohemian Rhapsody. Well deserved, by the way. Nothing wrong with this. Nothing wrong with this at all. If Hollywood wants to finally get around to acknowledging the fact that there are these great stories out there in rock and roll history, and they find the right actor or actress to portray the performer, I'm all good with it. We've seen Austin Butler as Elvis Presley. We had Rocket Man, Taron Egerton as Elton John. There have been a lot of flops as well. Whitney Houston comes to mind, James Brown. But when everything is right, there's money behind it, when the production value is actually halfway decent, and you've got a major studio behind it, this is what you get. A success story like this. A Complete Unknown, which will end up making very good money at the box office, somewhere projected between 70 and 80 million domestically. I'm encouraged with this, not because it's Bob Dylan, but because this will lead to more big screen, solid to high budget movies where we finally get to see these stories of our favorite rock and rollers. We know the Beatles project is coming up with Sam Mendes, the 4 movies with the 4 separate Beatles. never, ever, ever going to say, I don't want to see more and more of this. The analogy I've told in the past is that this is similar to the Marvel movies, where Hollywood figured out that, oh gee, we've got all these classic superheroes. So we got Spider-Man and the Avengers and Iron Man and Thor and Captain America. We've never actually explored doing a big budget movie with them. And look what happened. You created arguably the greatest movie franchise ever, which of course they've now destroyed. And that is always the fear, is that Hollywood will go too far. But the thing is, Hollywood has already kind of gone too far with the rock and roll biography. They've already found failure along with success. So maybe that will temper expectations and keep them a little bit more humble than they would be otherwise with future projects. So again, we will see how A Complete Unknown does at the Oscars here in the next month and a half, when the Academy Awards ceremony airs. There is a documentary coming out one day and one day only on IMAX. And this is, again, a public service because I could care less. 1-2-1. John and Yoko. This documentary will again be on IMAX screens one day only, April the 11th. And then later on in 2025, it will shift over to HBO Max. I am not a John Lennon fan. I respect the Beatles. I admire the Beatles. They are not the be-all, end-all of rock and roll to me. And especially John Lennon as a solo artist. And Yoko Ono, the leech, the barnacle that she was, helping to destroy the Beatles. Yes, she destroyed the Beatles. She was a very significant part of their breakup. Why do I want to know anything more about Yoko Ono? I don't. And then finally here, wrapping up news of the world. We mentioned a few weeks ago that the Doobie Brothers have a new album coming out featuring Michael McDonald back in the fold. We told you the album is called Walk This Road. Now we have an official release date. Walk This Road will be out June the 6th. And we have two singles out already from this album. Walk This Road and Call Me. We'll discuss those songs a little bit more at the end of this episode. And by the way, kudos to the Doobie Brothers, specifically the core three members from the classic lineup: Michael McDonald, Patrick Simmons, Tom Johnston. They have been inducted, well, they will be inducted. It's been told to them that they will be inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame, along with the likes this year of George Clinton, of course, of Parliament and Funkadelic, and Mike Love of the Beach Boys. So congratulations to those three core members of the Doobie Brothers, along with George Clinton and Mike Love and everybody else in the 2025 class of inductees for the Songwriters Hall of Fame. So now we move on to segment 2, where we discuss new music, and we have one album review for you, and it is a long time coming. This album was originally released on digital only in late summer of 2024. Physical format came out right around Thanksgiving. So finally, we're getting around to reviewing the Smashing Pumpkins, Agori Mori Me. So I will admit, I have been procrastinating on Agori Mori Me. You guys know this. I have been talking about this for months, saying, we're going to review it. I swear we're going to review it. I promise you we're going to review it. Well, I am fulfilling that promise, but it's on me. I dragged this out for too long. Now that we finally got into this dead spot in January where there's no more new music to really review, I said, hey, how about we review Smashing Pumpkins? Let me start the review by saying this. I am not the biggest Smashing Pumpkins fan in the world. Here is the issue. I've seen them in concert. Saw them back in 2023. They were phenomenal. They were absolutely phenomenal. Much, much better than I could have hoped for. Ridiculously above my expectation. But Smashing Pumpkins to me over the years are a band where I can pick and choose a song or two off every album. They're what I would call a greatest hits band, where there's 2 or 3 songs off all their albums. I would like to compile them, put them together, and I could make a phenomenal, even a 2-disc, greatest hits collection that would be fantastic. But I don't think I've ever really enjoyed one of their albums from beginning to end. And that goes all the way back to Siamese Dream, Melancholy, and the Infinite Sadness. They're what I would say, they're 2 most important classic albums. Quotes around classic. Now, we reviewed the 3-disc Autumn a few years ago. And I was underwhelmed because it was an extravagance. It was too much. It was way too much. Which tends to be the case with very few exceptions. Bruce Springsteen's The River, the double album, that was a performer, an artist at the peak of creativity. Same could be said for Guns N' Roses with Use Your Illusion 1 and 2. And I'm sure Smashing Pumpkin fans right now are going crazy, saying, what about Melancholy? That's a double album, that's fantastic. To me, it's not. Again, I could take 4 or 5 songs out of Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness, and that's all I want. My problem is this, and again, this is a backhanded compliment to the Smashing Pumpkins. They're incredibly musically competent. Their musicianship cannot be questioned. Billy Corgan, as the Lord God King of Smashing Pumpkins, leaves a lot to be desired. And I love the guy. I do. I love that he's got a great personality. The fact that he's involved in professional wrestling is cool as hell. I think he would be an awesome guy to have as a friend, a guy who you could sit down and have a couple beers with, and it would be an absolute blast. but I don't think he is the greatest songwriter in the world, and I don't think he's even close to being a decent singer. And it kind of pains me to say that because, again, when I saw them in concert back in 2023, you guys can go back in the archives, find it on the Fortress of Rock Spotify page or whatever podcast platform you listen to. Of course, you can find the Fortress of Rock on Spotify, Good Pods, Pocket Casts, Apple, Overcast, Castbox, Amazon Music, Audible, and iHeartRadio. Any of those, you can find the current episode along with all the past episodes. You can go find from a couple years ago, year and a half, when I reviewed the concert. First time I saw Smashing Pumpkins live back in the fall of 2023. And I praised them up and down. Incredible live band. Incredible. But here now, as we review Agore Mori Mi, I will once again stress to you, I just don't, this is a better live band to me than a studio band. And there are plenty of classic rock bands. The Cars, one of my favorite bands of all time. I love the Cars. By all accounts, terrible live band. Terrible live band. They were a studio band. To me, my experience with Smashing Pumpkins, it's the opposite. Great live band, not the greatest studio band. So, Agore Mori Mi, 10 tracks. We will go through it as we always do here on the Fortress of Rock, track by track. And as usually the case, we start off with the strongest songs. So the first song is the best song on the album, and that would be Eden. It has got a great guitar intro, but there are multiple different guitar riffs, formations throughout Eden that are fantastic. And again, Eden is the best song, and as you would expect, most bands will lead off an album if they're smart. And nobody's saying Smashing Pumpkins aren't smart. They go right out there, first song, best song, Eden. Now, I will say after Eden, I have gone back and forth on the other 9 songs, for the most part. I have gone back and forth. I have listened to this album 7 or 8 times, as I always do, to give you a fair review. I'm not going to listen to an album once or twice and jump in and say, hey, that's not fair. That's not fair to you, that's not fair to me. That's not being honest. You've got to listen to an album at least half a dozen times before you can really make a honest decision on whether it's good, whether it's bad, or it's somewhere in between. So I don't know what it says that I've been going back and forth with all these other songs. Song 2 is Pentagrams. And of course, the main line in this is Love Never Dies. Okay? Not necessarily a profound lyric from Billy Corgan. But I've gone, again, back and forth on this song. Is it good? Is it okay? Is it not so good? I think I finally come to the realization that it's good. It's the song that should follow Eden. And then you get into track 3, Sig Home, which is another one I've been going back and forth on. It's a serviceable rocker. That's the best I can say. And part of my problem throughout this album is that, again, Billy Corgan, his vocals, they do great on me at times. His voice is not the greatest voice in rock and roll. And he gets off on some very wild, weird tangents lyrically. And that's where this starts to come into play. So the first three songs, Eden, Pentagram, Sigome, not a bad start. Not a bad start. And then we go back almost to the bloated Autumn. The 3-disc, too much of nothing good collection, the 3 CD collection of Autumn, where it was more mellow, very few hard rocking songs. That's the good thing about Agori Mori Me, is at least for the most part, you're getting back to the rock and roll side of Billy Corgan and Smashing Pumpkins. But unfortunately, he just can't let go of his tendencies to want to get contemplative and get into his deep thinking mindset. So then track 4 is Pentecost, which is mellowish. You've got piano, you've got, and I know anymore you can't distinguish between strings and keyboards. Could be one, could be the other. Whichever one it is, you're getting those as well. And Pentecost is by far the worst song on the album. This is typical of the muck that we had to endure with Autumn, their last release. We didn't need to go back there. Luckily, track 5, War Dreams of Itself, pulls us back out again. This is just, it almost feels like you're taking an antidote for Pentecost. This is just a solid rocker, not a classic, nothing spectacular, but it's just like a palate cleanser for Pentecost. And more of that mellow Smashing Pumpkins stuff that we really don't need or don't like. And then track 6 is Who Goes There. It's an interesting song, but in the end it fails. I like lyrically, this is probably my favorite song on the album. We start off with Corgan singing about, we sent a postcard from the cross. So again, he's very apt, very want to go into religious and spiritual iconography. He wants to look at all these different, whether it's Satanism, whether it's Catholicism, he wants to delve into all these different levels of religious icons, and so we get that line about the postcard from the cross, and it works because then you start imagining Jesus Christ on the cross speaking to somebody. Hey, how's it going? I'm your Lord God Savior, suffering for you. How are things going? I mean, seriously, that's kind of what I got out of this. Now, it's not as flippant, the song isn't, but still, it is a mid-tempo song. It's not heavy, and it's not a mellow ballad. So it starts out well, but then it kind of fades into mediocrity. And then track 7 is 999, which I kind of have tied into track 3, Sigome, where it's a serviceable rocker. 999 has a brief piano introduction and that's about all that really distinguishes it from some of the other generic rockers on Agori Mori Me. And then track 8 is the one song where we get the Smashing Pumpkins trying to do their unique brand of pop rock. Think of 1979. That's what I'm getting at. Go with the Fall is track 8. And it's got that kind of vibe to it. It's okay. Again, I will just emphasize that I am not the biggest Smashing Pumpkins fan in the world, and I don't think Billy Corgan is the strongest singer or songwriter out there. And Go With the Fall is probably a really good example of where I see his failings, his shortcomings, as he's trying to recycle some of the greatest moments from the Smashing Pumpkins catalog, and it just doesn't work. Track 9 is Sicarus, which I have linked to track 5, War Dreams of Itself, in that they're both just solid, borderline head-banging rockers that serve no purpose other than to, again, be palate cleansers for everything else. They're here to say, we haven't sold out. We can still rock at the top level with everybody else. But then what do? To close out the album, track 10 is Murnow, which is again a mellow song. Strings, keyboards, the chorus, As the River Rolls. Another great generic rock and roll line. We have heard it over and over and over again. The flowing of water, the river. It's a typical generic lyric in rock and roll, meant to symbolize the flowing of life. And I do not like Smashing Pumpkins when they get mellow. And again, this is another shortcoming to me of Billy Corgan. His voice doesn't work when it comes to these mid-tempo, slower songs. He's better with that voice screaming, despite all my rage, I am still just a rat in a cage. And unfortunately for me, Smashing Pumpkins never, ever, ever seem to want to reclaim that rage, that anger from a song like, from Bullet with Butterfly Wings, and Zero. Let's go back and find that magic again, that hard rock magic. And this is what they do in concert. In concert, they find that magic. Live, they're all in. But lately, with Agori Mori Me and with Autumn, they meander, they wander. And I don't believe in the vision of Billy Corgan. So Agori Mori Me I can't recommend it. Let's put it this way. I can't recommend it. You've got better things. Go back out, even though we don't have a lot of new music right now. Go back out there and listen to some older stuff. The stuff that you love. Maybe stuff I've recommended in the past few years. Go out and listen to some older stuff. I hate to be harsh, And I'm not going to be as harsh with Agori Mori Me as I was with Autumn, because Autumn is 3 discs. That is too much of an investment of your time and my time. At least this is a regular length album. And it's better. It is marginally better than Autumn. But I still can't recommend it. So I will only give Agori Mori Me, well, how do I put this? Again, I can't recommend it. And I'm biased. Once again, for the last time, I will say I'm biased because I am not a huge Smashing Pumpkins fan. So maybe I'm not the right person. I will say this in all humility, and I'm not the right person to review this album, because this is probably it for me with Smashing Pumpkins. Despite the fact that they were fantastic in concert, I get burned time after time after time with the studio albums, and I just can't do it anymore. This is probably the last Smashing Pumpkins album I will fully invest myself in. And that sucks, because there's so little new music out there, and I know Billy Corgan is trying to be one of the more productive people out there in the world of rock and roll. The best way I can wrap it up is say I'll go see Smashing Pumpkins again live in concert, but I will not invest any more time in their studio work. All right, so before we head out to the rock and roll garage here at the Fortress of Rock and start segment 3, I want to go back with Doc Brown in the Rock and Roll DeLorean as we head back in the time stream and we look for classic moments in rock history, classic album releases, birthdays for January the 24th. I've already told you where you can find the Fortress of Rock. Also, don't forget to check out the Facebook page. And I do have the latest Weekend Rock project. It's already out there. It's already posted. So as you're listening to this, go out there and jump in and participate with our community. We are looking for your favorite rock songs that involve, this is going to sound really bad, but involve a sickness or an illness or a disease, or those words. So an actual literal sickness, illness, or disease, or the words sickness, illness, disease, something along those lines. Okay? For example, I went back to the classic Johnny Rivers song. You guys know the song. I get double points for this. Okay? Double points. The Rockin' Pneumonia and the Boogie Woogie Flu. Can't give you a better example than that. So get out there on the Facebook page for the Fortress of Rock. Jump in on the Weekend Rock Project. And then, of course, this Sunday afternoon, we will post a new video, a new song. Even though we don't have new albums, we do have some new songs out there. So we'll be okay in terms of New Music Sunday for a while. But I'm not sure which one I'm going to post yet for this coming Sunday, January the 26th. But it'll be out there Sunday afternoon, right before kickoff of the NFC Championship game. Again, check out the Fortress of Rock Facebook page for all that good stuff. And then I have to acknowledge my sources, the help I get for segment 1, News of the World, and here coming up segment 3, I Want to Go Back, our tribute to the late, great Eddie Money. 3 main sources. Now, of course, opinions, tangents, mine and mine alone. The rants, the ravings, that's all me. But the bare essential facts, sometimes they come from ultimateclassicrock.com, thisdayinmusic.com, and the Van Halen News Desk.com. All right, so I am strapped in. Doc Brown is buckled in. We are heading out to the rock and roll time stream. 1.21 gigawatts has been achieved. So let's get into I Want to Go Back. Starting off with birthdays here on January the 24th. January the 24th, 1974. Chris Hess. Could be Hesse. Sorry, sometimes my pronunciation ain't quite right. Christopher Hesse, drummer for the worst named band ever. And I have to admit, that's really the only reason I put him in here as a destination through the rock and roll time stream. Because his band has the worst name of all time. And I've seen him in concert, and I'm really not a big fan anyway. So, not a great band and a terrible band name. Chris Hesse, drummer for Hoobastank. Yeah. You guys couldn't come up with anything better than Hoobastank? Easily. I mean, it's not even close. Easily the worst band name in rock and roll history. But happy birthday, Chris. Happy birthday. Born on this day, January the 24th, 1968. For all of you hard rockers out there, you metalheads, this one's for you. Michael Kiske, vocalist for Halloween, born on this day in 1968. Born on this day, January the 24th, 1955. We talked earlier in the show about Glenn Tilbrook of Squeeze. Well, today, 1955, the birthday for keyboard player from Squeeze, Jools Holland. So a lot of Squeeze going on here today on the Fortress of Rock. Born on this day, January the 24th, 1949, the great. Gone too soon. Unfortunately, due to his own vices, his own problems, his own weaknesses, but still, a great talent gone too soon, John Belushi. And of course, John Belushi is here on the Fortress of Rock because of his pairing with Dan Aykroyd in the Blues Brothers. Rubber Biscuit, Soul Man. They had a lot of great cover songs, and what people never really gave Belushi and Aykroyd a lot of credit for, they got credit for it, but not enough, was shining the spotlight on the older R&B artists, the songs that they covered as the Blues Brothers. John Belushi, born on this day in 1949. Born on this day, January the 24th, 1947. Another great creative mind, artist who left us too soon. Now this time, of course, was not due necessarily to vices and bad habits and substance abuse. This was Warren Zevon. Now, I have always kind of had my issues with Warren Zevon, not not his music. Don't get me wrong, not his music. And of course, everybody remembers one of the greatest songs of all time, Werewolves of London. Nobody can dispute how incredible and iconic Werewolves of London is. And Warren Zevon, great songwriter, great musician. I'm not going to disparage him on that front, but it almost seemed like he got more credit than he deserved because of the fact that he died younger than he should have. And if that makes me sound cruel and heartless, I'm sorry. I feel the same way about Kurt Cobain. And you guys know this if you've been listening over the past 3 years to this podcast. You know sometimes actors, actresses, musicians, when they die young, their legend takes on mythical proportions that maybe aren't quite deserved. So again, I'll let you be the judge. I loved Warren Zevon, but was he really an all-time classic, great Hall of Fame level musician? That's a tough call. For me, at least, that's a tough call. But Warren Zevon, born on this day in 1947. Born on this day, January the 24th, 1941. Great voice. Great voice from down in the New Orleans area with the Neville brothers. Of course, Aaron Neville. Again, born on this day in 1941. Most of us probably know him from his duet with Linda Ronstadt. Don't know much. In 1941, we've got a couple other birthdays. So it's not just Aaron Neville, but also born on January the 24th, 1941. Oh, yes, they call him the Streak. Ray Stevens. Yes, Ray Stevens, born on this day in 1941. And then, last but definitely not least, as we look at birthdays on January the 24th. And again, this is 1941, but this to me is easily the most important. One of my personal favorites. Never got to see him live in concert. It's killing me. This will go down as one of the few performers, one of the few bands, acts that I never got to see live, along with Tom Petty. Now I'm talking about the ones that I reasonably could have seen. I was never going to get to see Led Zeppelin live. I was never going to get to see the Beatles live. But if there was a chance, if there was a hope, the great Neil Diamond, born on January the 24th, 1941. I love Neil Diamond. God, I love Neil Diamond. Go back to his connection with the Monkees. He's just an unbelievable songwriter, an unbelievable performer. Just never got to see him live. I will always regret that. I'm not as bitter about that as I am Tom Petty. I'm not going to tell that story here today. I've told it in the past. But Neil Diamond, one of the all-time greats, born on this day in 1941. So now we move on to anniversaries here on the Fortress of Rock in I Wanna Go Back. Once again, our tribute to the late, great Eddie Money. Now, this first one is going to be an odd anniversary given what we normally discuss here on the Fortress of Rock. January the 24th, 2021. Morgan Wallen, a very controversial but very, very popular country artist. His album, Dangerous, the double album, was the number one album on this day in the United States. And that, in and of itself, okay. I'm all good with that. I know Billboard has tried to kick rock and roll to the curb, and they acknowledge country music now as a force along with hip-hop and rap. I know that's just the way things are. But I want to point out some things about Morgan Wallen. Not his personal indiscretions. I don't care about that. But this is more along my criticisms with Taylor Swift and how it ties into the Billboard charts and how the Billboard charts suck. And they don't give enough new artists or enough new music space to breathe, credit, any chance to survive. I love the analogy, you guys know I use this all the time, of the snake eating its own tail. And that's what Billboard is doing with what they've constructed in terms of their singles and their album charts over the last 2 decades. They have become supposedly one of the driving forces to push popularity of music, yet they, in the same breath, destroy music in that they say, well, Taylor Swift, all of her songs are in the top 20. 5 of her albums are in the top 30 on the album charts. They are squeezing out any chance for new artists to make a mark, especially rock and roll artists. So now we go back to Morgan Wallen. Morgan Wallen, with Dangerous, the double album, a record-setting 98 weeks at the top of the country album charts. Are you really going to tell me that one album was so popular that it was number one for almost 2 years? That's bullshit. Oh, sorry. I broke my rule. Please forgive me. Please forgive me. Don't condemn me. I know I try to keep the Fortress of Rock clean, and I'm so sorry. I will wash my mouth out with soap after the podcast is over. I get very passionate about this. Please don't report me to the Spotify police. You know what I mean, though. Come on. Even going back to when we grew up. When we grew up with Thriller. Thriller was the de facto number one, no dispute, top album of our generation. Anybody who grew up from the late 70s through to the early 90s, Thriller, everybody, whether you liked it or you didn't, you were going to acknowledge the fact that Thriller was the number one album of that era. That 15, 17-year span. And Thriller, deservedly so, was on top of the charts for weeks upon weeks upon weeks, but it wasn't number one for 2 years. If any album would have had that kind of reign, it would have been Thriller, and even Thriller back when the Billboard charts were some semblance of sanity. what I think Thriller was number one, and I'm just guessing here. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but Thriller was probably number one for half a year to 2/3 of a year. And that was the most popular album of a generation. A generation when recorded music sold like gangbusters. People bought albums, people bought CDs, people bought cassettes. And now, this digital age of music, this streaming age of music, we've gotten this weird, screwy, stupid kind of measurement involved with Billboard, where you can say an album on the country charts was the most popular for 2 years? Almost literally 2 years? Come on. And then on top of that, Morgan Wallen had 19 songs from this album, Dangerous. 19 songs that hit the Hot 100. And I know Taylor Swift has probably topped this. It wouldn't shock me if Beyonce has topped this. But this is what's wrong. The metrics don't work when it comes to growing the music industry. It is the snake eating its own tail. Billboard, by promoting this and saying Taylor Swift and Morgan Wallen are dominating. They might be dominating, but not like this. You act like everybody is a lemming, and everybody in the majority of homes across the country are listening to Morgan Wallen and Taylor Swift, to the point where 19 songs from one album from Morgan Wallen hit the Hot 100. And I know, again, I know Taylor Swift, the numbers are probably much worse. Or much better, depending on your perspective. But when you do this, you push out the potential for other artists, other bands to get in there and at least say, hey, we broke through into the top 100. We broke through into the top 200 on the album charts. Billboard is destroying the business that they are supposed to promote with garbage like this. And Morgan Wallen, this anniversary example from 2021, is a perfect way to describe my current hatred for the Billboard charts. January the 24th, 2017, Butch Trucks passed away. Butch Trucks, of course, was the drummer for the Allman Brothers Band, and unfortunately died by his own hand, as we see much too often with musicians. On this day, and this is an album I am going to start getting back into, trying to listen to this. When I hear the music snobs out there, the people who tell you and I how much smarter they are than us when it comes to music, and I've always got to try to listen to what they say is great. Yes, they in quotes. On this day, January the 24th, 2016, the number one album in the United States was David Bowie's Black Star, his 25th and final studio album. Of course, right around the time that Black Star was released is when David Bowie passed away. And you can go back to what I was saying here a few minutes ago about Warren Zevon. Now, of course, there is a difference in level of popularity, icon status between David Bowie and Warren Zevon, but the argument is similar. from what I've seen, Black Star is praised far and wide as one of the most iconic albums of the last 20 years. One of the greatest albums of the last 20 years. Is it because David Bowie died right around the time the album was released? If he'd lived on for another 5 years, would we really be calling Black Star a great album, a touchstone album? That's why I need to go back and start listening to Black Star and make that judgment for myself, because I recently, after watching, we reviewed it a couple months ago, month and a half ago here on the Fortress of Rock, the Yacht Rock documentary on HBO Max, and listening to how everybody praised Steely Dan's Asia, up and down, left and right. One of the greatest engineered, most beautifully well-produced albums ever. I was like, I got to listen to this album again. I've got to listen to Asia again. And I went back this past week and listened to it. Almost put me to sleep. Almost put me to sleep. And I'm sure the music snobs will come after me with their pitchforks and their torches. But outside of some of the hits like Deacon Blues and Peg, those are great songs. But the rest of the album, literally a cure for insomnia. And I tried to listen to everything going on, the layers of music, the background, everything. And it just, I don't get it. I don't get how it's universally praised as this musically technological marvel. The sound, the engineering, oh my God, it's fantastic. No, it's not. And again, this is why I do this podcast, is so that you and I can dispel a lot of these myths about some of this music that they will tell you, the music snobs, the music critics, they'll tell you we don't get it, and if we don't get it, we don't understand music, where they're the ones that are really wrong. But I will go back, and I'll let you know at some point here in the near future. I'll listen to Black Star, and I'll let you know what I think. Oh, here's another one. Another one that I can't stand. Public service, for you guys only, for the Bob Dylan fans out there. January the 24th, 1976, Bob Dylan's Desire was the number one album in the U.S. on this day. And then we'll close things out with a couple important moments involving the Beatles. On this day, January the 24th, 1962, Brian Epstein put pen to paper, signed a deal to manage the Beatles. He got, at the time, an unprecedented 25% of the Beatles' gross earnings, where at the time the standard rate was only 10%. Some would say, did Brian Epstein take advantage of the Beatles? 25% seems a pretty hefty price tag to pay for a manager. I'm just saying. Then finally, on this day, January the 24th, 1958, the Quarrymen played their only show at the Cavern Club in Liverpool. And of course, they returned 3 years later only they were known then as, yes, the Beatles. So there you go, kids. Very fun, very crazy. I Want to Go Back segment. Doc Brown has turned us around. He's pulling the rock and roll DeLorean back into the garage here at the Fortress of Rock. We're pulling up the drawbridge over the moat. The moat, of course, frozen. Although I've heard that the weather could get a little bit warmer, and maybe we'll see some flowing water in that moat the next time we talk, the last day of February. Last day of January. That would be episode 181. But now I'm going to wander from the garage here at the Fortress of Rock, head back into the studio for our fourth and final segment. You know it, you love it. It is time to wrap it up. All right, so you know by now what we do here in our final few minutes together every Friday night. We've looked back at the past. We just got done with that, and I want to go back. We looked at the present situation, the present day, in segments 1 and 2. And now it is time to look to the future of music as it pertains to our podcast here, The Fortress of Rock. I'm not going to complain. I'm not going to whine and cry and moan. It's just the way things are. There's not a new album on the horizon. And I mentioned in segment 1, we don't have any concerts on the horizon for the foreseeable future. So it's going to be songs, new songs, and it's going to be documentaries and other types of things to fill in the gaps for the immediate future here in terms of what we're going to review on Breakdown. Now, the good news is I have found enough to get us through probably mid-February. Scraping, scratching, and clawing to find some interesting musical stuff. Next week, which will be episode 181. Yes, I misspoke a few minutes ago. We're not in February yet next week, next Friday. We're still in January. Episode 181 will be January the 31st, 2025. I am going to review the music documentary that will be airing this coming Monday night. That would be the 27th. So if you want to watch this along with me, feel free, and then you can share in, agree or disagree on my take. This coming Monday, the 27th, on NBC. Ladies and gentlemen, 50 years of Saturday Night Live music. Now, I have not watched SNL in a long, long time. I do not like it anymore. I do not like how they've gone so over the top with their political views, so bitter and nasty versus one side against the other. Like so many other shows out there, they seem to be more focused on dividing us instead of bringing us together like they used to with good humor. And I'm not, come on, it can be raunchy as all get out, and I'm fine with that. Some of the best skits from the 80s, the 90s, into the early 2000s. Raunchy stuff. Of course, going back to the 70s with the original cast. You're never going to top that. But as I watched it through the 70s, 80s, and 90s, into the early 2000s, the music was an integral part, an extremely important part of Saturday Night Live. You tuned in to not only watch Eddie Murphy do Gumby, to see, Will Ferrell and Sherry O'Terry doing the cheerleaders. You tuned in to watch the music acts, at least until, of course, music went to hell in a handbasket. But I am going to be very fascinated to see how they handle this retrospective. Now, Questlove is doing this, and I trust him. I know that man cares deeply about all types of music. I love Questlove. That man is awesome. And I trust him to do a great job here in this retrospective of 50 years of the musical artists who have been on Saturday Night Live. So that will be our review in Breakdown next week. Ladies and gentlemen, 50 years of Saturday Night Live music. Then in 2 weeks, here on the Fortress of Rock, we're going to talk about songs. A lot of freaking songs. What songs, you might ask? Well, some of them we've talked about last week and even the week before. I'm building up. I'm stocking up. Since we don't have an album, we are going to just review songs, and more songs. And those songs include the new song from Close Enemies, which of course is the brand new band featuring Aerosmith's Tom Hamilton. The lead-off single from their upcoming album is Sound of a Train. We have talked about the Cold Stares. We mentioned a few weeks ago they've got a brand new song out called Automobile. And I have finally heard that this is the first single off The Southern Part 2. So we're going to get a sequel to the 2024 album The Southern. So Automobile is another song we're going to review here. Billy Gibbons, of course, the frontman for ZZ Top, guitarist extraordinaire, one of the top 10 guitarists, in my opinion, of all time. A song he wrote with Billy Bob Thornton appeared in the season finale of Landman on Paramount Plus, Living It Up Down in Texas. The Doobie Brothers. We mentioned this in segment 1. Their new album, Walk This Road, officially now out June the 6th. The title track is out, Walk This Road, along with Call Me. So we will review the first 2 releases off the upcoming Doobie Brothers album, Walk This Road, and then You Might Not Like It, You Might Hate It, You Might Laugh at Me for saying this is an awesome, awesome song. But the Spin Doctors are back. Yes, Little Miss can't be wrong. Their new song is cool. I'm telling you, I love it, and we might be discussing it more in a minute or two. Still a Gorilla. The new single from the Spin Doctors. They haven't had an album out in over a decade. We told you last week they've got a new one coming out. The first single is Still a Gorilla. So that is your group of songs, and we'll probably add to it, hopefully, in the next week or so. So in 2 weeks, that whole batch of tunes we're going to review. And then I also have on the back burner the fact that I recently watched the classic rock and roll documentary for the first time ever for me, Yes, I know, I'm pushing 60, and it's shocking that I never watched Gimme Shelter before. Of course, that would be the documentary looking back at the awful, tragic 1969 Rolling Stones concert at Altamont Speedway. I will give you my review of Gimme Shelter in the coming weeks here on the Fortress of Rock. And that leaves us with one last bit of business, and that would be our backhanded tribute to the Billboard charts. After I just went on a rant in the last segment about how much I despise the current state of the Billboard charts and how they do the opposite of what they're supposed to do. They do not promote music. They promote one or two or three artists and they push everybody else to the side. But back in the 70s and the 80s, into the early 90s, the Billboard charts did what they were supposed to do. They encouraged, they promoted all types of music. So because we've got to do everything around here at the Fortress of Rock better, because we owe that to you. We owe that to rock and roll. We have got now our own rock and roll charts. We've been doing this now for over a year. At the end of every episode, we give you the Fortress of Rock #1 album and our top songs of the week. #1 album of the week. Yes, finally, the blockade has been broken. No more Tremonti this week. And you guys are probably going, thank God. We're kind of getting tired of the Maestro and his infatuation with Mark Tremonti. Keep in mind, there's not a lot of other new stuff out there. Okay? But this week, no Tremonti. #1 album this week is, as you could probably figure out, even though I did not give it the best, the most glowing of recommendations, #1 album this week on the Fortress of Rock charts is Agori Mori Me by the Smashing Pumpkins. Our top songs. We usually pick a couple because I cheat when it comes to songs. Really hard to just pick one song, so I hedge my bets. Always like to pick two. And they are two of the songs I just mentioned that we're going to be reviewing here in the next few weeks on the Fortress of Rock. You can probably tell with how giddy I was about the song. And again, I don't care. You can judge me all you want. That's fine. I love this song. So one of our top songs of the week is Stilla Gorilla by the Spin Doctors, along with one of our favorite smaller bands, along with Roger Clyne and the Peacemakers and the Black Moods, the Cold Stares, Automobile. And I'm very, very excited to hear that they do actually have a new album coming out, the sequel, The Southern Part 2. So once again, your recap as we wrap things up here. #1 album this week, Agori Mori Me by the Smashing Pumpkins. Your top songs for the week. Here, episode 180 on January the 24th, 2025. Stilla Gorilla by Spin Doctors and Automobile by the Cold Stares. That's going to do it. Thank you so much for sharing your Friday night with me, the Maestro, Kevin Crane. Of course, you are who you are. I am the Ayatollah of rock and rolla. But we don't label, we don't judge. Facts is facts. We are about halfway through the winter up here in the upper Midwest outside the Fortress of Rock studio. Still cold, still snowy. But eventually the light, the warmth of summer will be appearing at the end of the tunnel. We will all get through it. Things will be better for all of us when we get to April to May. Music, live music, outdoor music will start up again. But until that time, take care of each other, love the one you're with. We will do this all over again in 7 days. Once again, I'm the Maestro, Kevin Crane. Take care, everybody. Peace out.